Welcome back to CSM 15. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jason.
And we've spent quite a few years in customer success. So we're rewinding the track a little bit and talking about today what we wish we knew when we started in customer success. Jason, I'll let you kick us off. What's one of the big things you wish you knew walking into CS?
So I don't know that this is necessarily CS specific, but I think this is life specific or potentially career specific. At the end of the day, if you are not a medical doctor, your work is probably not saving lives. So nothing is as serious as it appears. And that sounds like a really harsh statement, but kind of like the synthesis of that is simply, it's okay if things go wrong. It's okay to take a second and breathe and truly think about how to respond or how to react to a negative situation or even a positive situation, right? Like at the end of the day, in customer success, specifically in SaaS, we are not saving lives. We are not on the front lines of anything. Like if a customer is churning, yes, that sucks, but it's not nothing that is going to wreck your life, right? Or it's not nothing where you're going to go to jail for. So take some time. If a negative situation arises and you encounter that, breathe, digest it, think thoughtfully about how to address it, and come up with a plan from there. I would say early on in my career, I was very hyper reactive to things. I would either overreact on some sort of news or information or negativity, or I would completely underreact. And I think someone I used to work with, they mentioned the anxiety bell curve, right? You kind of want to be in the middle or just on the edges because that's when you have enough anxiety about things that you will take action when you need to and appropriately, but you don't want to overload yourself so much that you are just stressed 24/7. So I think it's good to just breathe in, breathe out, think about what you need to do in whatever situation you're in, and then take action from there. Don't overreact or underreact to every minute thing because at the end of the day, we are not saving lives. So that's mine, which is a little bit personal. I was very much the overreactive person early on, Chris. But what about you? What would be your first thing?
Well, I'd echo that, honestly, of take a step back, breathe. I think your first reaction is your worst reaction in most cases. So give it a moment to ponder it. But also, just in that way that you present yourself, I think invest in building up your executive presence acumen. It is so beneficial. I think learn the product, learn the industry, and come ready to just deliver recommendations you're bringing to a team or deliver the way that you're presenting to a team as more of a prescriptive consultant. I think this is so beneficial because especially as we talk about executive business reviews, what we've spoken about before, or just day-to-day meetings, you will be aligned to the level at which you speak. And I think if you come in and you don't sound confident or you don't sound knowledgeable or you're not presenting yourself as kind of this expert in the field, and listen, underlying imposter syndrome is normal and fine. You do not have to be fully confident that you know everything. In fact, it might be a bad sign if you think you actually do know everything. But you do need to present yourself as if you have this subject matter expertise in what you're speaking on and present it in a strategic way so that you can up-level yourself, so you can have a good appearance in front of executives, and also most importantly, so an executive feels like they want to speak to you again, like they want your insights and feel like you can actually provide them any insights or value.
Yeah, and I have a question for you, but before I do, I want to just call out imposter syndrome, I think, is in every field, role, etc. It's everywhere. If you're here, if you're doing it, if you're actively working the job, if you are still in CS with an organization, leading customers and helping them, you're not an imposter. You're doing it, right? It's normal to feel like at times, maybe I don't know as much as I think I do, but if you are here and still in a role, you're not an imposter, first. Second, what would you say to somebody who feels like they're lacking executive presence skills or they're lacking the ability to kind of command a room or a conversation? How would you recommend to them to get better at?
Practice. I think especially in today's environment, there are so many tools out there that can help you with this. One thing that really helped me early was there was a kind of group at one of our previous companies that did speaking skill work where you would present on a topic and it would be a topic not work related. You'd have 5 minutes to present and you would need to remove ums or ahs or moments where you felt or came off as not confident. I think the speaking part is really important to it, but also just up your knowledge and kind of explore the industry so you can delve into those insights. I think also watch others that are coming off as knowledgeable and just listen to some speeches. I think executive presence is a really big topic out there. I think there's a lot of content to explore. I think keep up leveling it, but also understand that executive presence is something that will grow over your career. So definitely don't go into it setting like your goal to have a better executive presence in 1 month. You might be incrementally better, but you won't have it in a month. Just keep working at it.
100%. And the practicing, right? Practice makes perfect. It's a phrase that everybody has said for all time at this point. If you can see and identify opportunities to public speak, I think that is the best course to build that executive presence. Early on for me, when I was in college, part of my career, maybe not career, job is probably a better phrase. One of the jobs I had in college was I worked in our career services department, and I had to go dorm to dorm. I had to go to events on campus and public speak about what our career service department did, what are avenues for people to find internships and jobs post-college, right? I had to cover a broad gamut. And that was really my first introduction to public speaking at scale. And that was a tremendous foundation for me to build upon, to have the ability to walk into a room, command the room, speak to execs at their level. So doing it is the best way to get better at it. 100% agree with that.
I would say try to also speak in front of people in person. It's funny you bring up the college experience. I was a tour guide in college, and I think that helped a lot with speaking skills, of being confronted by like 20 people and needing to project and, provide information. Not always was I accurate, but I got the point across. So I know we're in this remote world, but yeah, if there are any opportunities local to you where you can speak in front of somebody, I think that helps so much more.
I've literally thought about it, totally off topic. I've thought about like hosting like presentation nights with friends. Like you have to come and present on a topic. I think that would just be kind of fun to see what people would do. But yeah, in person, practice whenever you can, super important. On that same token, kind of, right? Like you're focusing on your presence, on how you command a call, how you engage with execs, how do you talk to them. I would zoom out a little bit. So the second thing that I wish I knew beforehand, and definitely certainly know now, and it's something I think about quite often, is how you're perceived both internally and externally matters a lot. From an external perspective, if you are not perceived as the subject matter expert, as the strategic advisor or partner, or as somebody who can speak the language of an exec, the likelihood that you're going to be able to generate the movement you need within a customer, not super high. Certainly, it can happen, but if they are confident in you and who you are, you're more likely to go further with that customer. Just like your perception internally within your organization is important, because if you are perceived as somebody who is weak in a variety of skills, who can't necessarily lead a call or talk intelligently about the product or things of that nature, it's going to put way more eyes on you and any negative outcomes that you potentially derive. So at that point, your mistake is magnified. If you are already perceived as somebody who can't do the job or isn't confident, whatever the perception is, any mistakes are magnified. Because now like, oh, here this person is messing up more and more and more. We all know in today's world, layoffs are a frequent thing. If you have that negative perception, you could potentially be negatively impacted. But if you have that positive perception, if people look at you and say, Chris knows what he's doing. Chris can do X, Y, and Z. He has no problems. Like I can just let Chris go to work and I know things are going to end well. That is a great spot to be in. It gives you way more room within an organization to operate how you need to operate, have a little bit more trust from your managers, a little bit more leeway if something does go wrong, right? If you slip up once, it's not the biggest deal, but if you slip up 20 times and we think you're going to continue to slip up, that's a problem. So perception internally and externally, super important. You want to make sure as much as you can, right? People say first impressions matter. They do, and they continue to matter after that first one as well.
The only thing I want to comment on with internal perception that I've noticed and have actively worked to be better at is when you do have good internal perception and you're tapped on quite frequently to support things, do not say yes to every request. There are going to be things where you will likely know that there's somebody better at that than you. Loop that person in. It looks so much better to, especially to the organization's perspective, to instead of you just saying yes because you want your hand, you want your name, you want yourself on the byline of everything, to instead be the directory rather than always the point person. I think that also helps with your reputation, that you're showing you can acknowledge, hey, I do have some knowledge on this thing, but I think if you want this project to be most successful, you should talk to John Smith.
Yeah, agreed. And taking on too much leads to you dropping the ball on things at one point or another. I was a victim of that, again, early on in my career. I was overzealous in many different avenues. I took on way too much, and then I got to a point where nothing was getting done the right way. So I love that point as well. Be the person that can connect the dots, or have enough humility to say, I'm not the right person for this, so-and-so is. I love that. So what would be your third then? Third thing you wish you knew, or third thing you learned early on that really helped you a lot?
I think my second would be be a program manager and acknowledge that you have to be a program manager. A lot of people will go into it and you just send next steps, but realistically, you need to be a program manager in customer success, both internally and externally. What I mean by internally is it is not going to be anybody's, directive or thing on their mind to reach out to your customers. So if you want to establish a strong connection between organization to organization, it is your duty to orchestrate having an executive reach out to another executive or having this leader reach out to this leader. That is your responsibility. You need to kind of oversee that entire business to business relationship. And then externally, in the partnership with that customer, you will likely be the person who cares the most about your tool. That is just the reality of it. So you also need to hold them accountable through timelines, through actual due dates, get their agreement on them. Don't just set them ambiguously and then hold them accountable to something they never agreed to, but set them collaboratively with the customer and then hold them accountable to that and truly treat it like you're kind of project managing them. You don't have to always get super technical, but just set those objectives and keep it on pace. I think that is the best way to also be able to kind of create this backlog of here are the things we're working on. Here's what's going on. So especially if there's any questions from leadership at your customer of what's happening, you have that log. You also have the log of if that customer is falling behind that you can kind of shed light on to highlight, it's not really our tool's issue. We've been highlighting to your team what they should be doing, but we're not getting that traction we're supposed to get.
When you get into that instance, how often do you actually, it's potentially a loaded question, how often do you actually remember, or how often do your customers remember about this log? Is that something you're sharing with them that, hey, I'm tracking everything. You can see that live tracking here. I'm expecting you to also look at this too, right? Talk to me about how that conversation goes.
We have a tool for mutual success plans. So I'll pull it up. I'll show it to them. I'll show them that there's a Gantt chart and timelines and due dates. I will recap those over emails because my expectation is they will never log into that success plan. And that's the purpose of screen sharing it, is you're showing, hey, I'm tracking this. And I also think anytime that you do presentations, if you've built that relationship, and you don't have to do this for every customer, but if you're in a customer relationship where you're using a mutual success plan to guide it forward, make sure you incorporate screenshots of that into your decks. I think just the more times they see it, understanding they likely will never individually access it on their own whim, it will remind them, hey, they're tracking this. They're on top of this. They're holding us accountable. And also transparently, it puts in their head of hey, one of my leaders will probably see this thing. And if we come into a meeting and I haven't executed on any of this, it's going to look bad on me.
That first time when you show them that plan, I've started, even if the executive sponsor isn't on the call where we're showcasing it, if they're not involved in the cadence calls, whatever, I still just send them an invite to that success plan as well. When I say to the team, hey guys, you now have access, I make sure the leader sees that, is on that email as well. So even if they are not actively showing it or reviewing it with you, they know it exists. And I think that goes a really long way to helping keep people accountable as well.
I think it does. And sometimes you get the anomaly. I'll call them the exemption to the rule, but sometimes I'll get on an executive connect and bring up the success plan and they're like, oh, I actually reviewed this. Very nice thing to hear. Very rare thing for me to hear, but it does happen. And some people do click that link. So to your point, yeah, if you have this way to share that out, definitely add on that leader. But Jason, what would be your third thing?
I'm also now realizing I got my numbers mixed up. I know that was your second thing. Just want to call that out. Third thing though is technical aptitude. You really, and I talk about this a little, I've talked about here and there. Your day zero is so important at any company you're at. And by that, I mean your onboarding to both processes within the organization as well as the technology that you're responsible for helping people use. If you don't know how it works, if you don't have the ability to grasp different feature sets, how they might connect with each other, where do they integrate, how do they integrate, right? If you can't know the technical function of your product, you're not going to be of much help to your customers. And I will die on that hill 1,000 times over. I have gone into conversations with CSMs throughout my career, and they're asking me, probably the most basic functionality questions that I feel like we should know because you've been in the product, or at least I think you've been in the product. So having that technical knowledge, that technical expertise of your own product needs to be there. If it's not, that's when I've seen CSMs struggle to, as we've talked about, have a positive perception, drive meaningful outcomes, keep people accountable, because you are not even accountable for how your own product works at that point. So that'd be my number 3.
I can't echo that enough. I think Yes, I think just like addressing the industry shift where like everyone in CS is saying be more strategic, be more of a strategist. Absolutely, you should. But you need that technical foundation. And I think just to correlate it there, like it also assists you if you know what the product can do in depth, you can also align that strategy better and also be able to speak to it and kind of defend like, here's how this gets done. I do think you look really weak if the only conversations you can lead are the strategic ones and you can't guide a team through putting that in place.
Or one of the worst too is like, I don't know, I'll come back to you or I'll follow up. Like, yes, you probably are not going to know every single nook and cranny on a moment's notice on a call, but you should be able to answer the vast majority of how does this work? Like that should be things you should know and be in your toolkit to answer like on the spot. Once in a while, sure, that's fine, but you got to know it. Now, on that
100%.
note, and I realize we are a little over time here, Chris, lay it on us. Number 3, what's the third thing that you wish you knew going into becoming a CSM?
I saved my biggest for last. This one has hurt me, and you just need to keep in the back of your head. Your champion is not your decision maker. Your champion is a great partner. They're going to be who helps you drive evangelism for your platform. They're going to be who helps you drive value for their organization. But at the end of the day, they do not sign that contract. And I think sometimes you might get over reliant on your champion or over reliant on their perspective of things. And I think it's so important to remind yourself, although they are a phenomenal champion in a lot of cases, they're not the economic signer, and you need to go and get the economic signer's feedback. And realistically, what the champion is saying, especially in a lot of these situations where we have personable relationships with our champions, they might sugarcoat it because they don't want to have to tell you bad news. Go make sure that you are knocking on enough doors that if there is bad news or if there is a bad perspective, you're hearing it, and you're hearing it, before it's resolving in a renewal not being signed.
I've been hurt. I've been sad, heartbroken, a million different ways on that exact thing. I think even now, to some extent, I have a tendency to kind of latch onto the champion because they're willing to engage, because we develop these great relationships. So echo, reinforce, second, retweet, whatever you want to say to that statement. Like, champions are great to have, but do not rely on them to help you get contract signature because they often might not be the people who do that. So go find who is, because I've been hurt by that one many a times. But overall, I think we've talked a lot about skills that are soft skills, I think. And I think as we've went through and had this conversation, I'm realizing more and more focusing on some of that soft skill development, both early on in your career, while you're still in your career, becomes so important to making sure that you are secure in your position. I think nowadays it's really important to think about, am I doing the right activities that is going to help me like showcase my skills, showcase my ability. And I think a lot of that comes around soft skills, I should say. So all in all, great conversation. If you guys have any feedback about the topics we shared, about the different skills that we shared, we'd love to hear them. And as always, if there's anything that you want us to discuss, or if you want to be a guest on the show, let us know. We're always happy to hear people out and see if we can get you on. So thanks so much for tuning in. You'll hear from us soon.